Hello English students, and welcome to another video in the series that they are all talking about. It's Paris in 5 minutes, although as you probably know by now it may take a little bit longer than that. You're watching the Excel English channel. You presumably are an AQA language and literature student, and you are interested in analysis of one of the texts from the Paris Anthology, and on this occasion it will be Paris for Children, which is a chapter from the Rough Guide to Paris. Interesting text and one that we have to say about. In summary, the Rough Guide is a sort of comprehensive resource for tourists and travellers, and it offers a directory of attractions. They publish guidebooks for destinations all over the globe, and they have a very strong reputation. In the Paris for Children section of their Paris Guide, they offer a range of information, including essentials, parks, gardens, zoos, circuses, theatres, museums and sites, shops. They cover quite a lot. There are also text boxes in this chapter offering suggestions for parents of babies, sports lovers, workshops, and their list of the top 10 child-friendly Paris sites. So, for context then, this is clearly a written text, and it belongs to quite a niche genre, which affects the language in it quite distinctively. It's a travel guidebook, but one that's very much written in a kind of a directory style. Interesting to think about these texts. It's nice to have a book in your hand as you travel. I suppose the internet has gone some way to replace these texts, but they very much have that informational directory function that perhaps we over-rely on Google for these days. With regards to its purpose, it is a combination of offering advice and information, and particularly the way that it balances those things in the language is of interest to us when we start looking at detail. The audience will be travellers and tourists, and obviously you are only really going to read this chapter if you intend to take a child to Paris. The subjects contained within are children, the activities, attractions, shopping, parks, and there are some overlaps there with some of the other texts in the anthology. With regard to representation, the text is self-representing itself as a comprehensive and authoritative guide. It offers a balance of advice and information. It is dense, and this is a key feature of the text. There is a maximum amount of information packed in there. It is descriptive and factual, and there are a number of skillful language devices used to kind of skillfully pack information into the text. The representations of Paris are mixed, but they are mostly positive. This is, of course, a text being produced by travel enthusiasts, for travel enthusiasts. Overall, it is very positive, and it goes some way to promote Paris. And this range of detail is really promoting, I guess, the extent of things that are on offer for you in Paris, this vibrancy and variety of the city. Although it's promotional, it is also realistic, and it has its credibility to think about. So the Rough Guide obviously has a reputation for reliability and the accuracy of their information. So there are a number of sections where it's really quite realistic about the limitations. I think it goes so far as to describe museums, for example, as tedious. So it wants you to have a realistic overview of some of the problems that you can face as well, and that makes it a credible source. It's significant to represent that this is a corporately authored text, and corporate authorship is where the author of a text, rather than being an identified individual, is a brand. This is true, of course, of texts that are adverts, for example. So we don't have an individual author here, and it may well be, and probably is the case, that this text was produced by several different authors and is probably constantly being revised. And this brand, the Rough Guides, has, if you like, a house style, their approved writing style, that all of its different writers will be meeting. With regard to the linguistic features, as you can see, there is a lot of detail to talk about here. This is quite a unique, stylistically, this is quite a unique text, which makes it a very interesting one to write about. And if it were printed for an exam essay, I would be very confident that I would have a lot to say about this, and I hope that you will too. With regard to the grammar, there are all manner of grammatical forms, but predominantly there are complex, compound, declarative sentences. These are information-rich, dense sentences with a balance of information. These complex forms include subordination and coordination, and of course listing forms. Coordination can be used to list information, and it has really, if you read the descriptive and advisory sections, it has actually quite a fluent style, a fluent register. There are adverbial and adjective phrases, and these are frequently embedded into sentences. Sometimes adverbials front the sentences, are foregrounded at the beginning, sometimes they're at the back, but these are often embedded into sentences using commas, dashes, and brackets, a variety of ways, parenthetical ways to actually fit information into sentences. Directory sentences are often fragments, particularly where it's listing details like prices and opening times, but they're also the descriptive sentences within the directory entries. These are often fragments as well, where the subject of the sentence can just be supplied by the heading. And so it provides a kind of shorthand, compact style, which is allowing them to pack more detail in. There is a pattern of deontic modality in this text. We have might, can, and will, all, of course, giving you varying degrees of possibility or likelihood. Might is avoiding misrepresentation, and I guess readers will have to make up their own mind if they're told it might be like this or you might enjoy this. Can suggests activity and possibility, and will is often used to convey a sense of certainty. The text is using the second person repeatedly, which addresses and engages readers, but there is very little in the way of first person. Remember what was said about corporate authorship. This isn't being written by single individuals, but a brand. On one occasion, I think the inclusive pronoun are is used. With regard to lexis, there is plenty of idiomatic language here, conveying a sense of voice. Actually, I find the descriptive language in this actually very readable and very engaging. They've done a brilliant job, as is the reputation of the brand, for making a lot of information actually very readable. The idiomatic language is conveying a sense of voice. Things are rather splendid, or we have these sort of idiomatic commentaries like on the whole or be sure to check out. Obviously, this is lowering the formality somewhat, and I guess making it a little bit more engaging for a wider audience. The descriptive language is, I think, quite good for a text that's obviously not a literary text. It does manage to evoke the characteristics of the things that are described, and you do get a real sense, reading the descriptions of the shops, you do get a real sense of their individuality. Attractive details are added. I quite like this one. Insanely expensive, but utterly elegant. A nice kind of balanced form there, a parallel form. There are in places a lot of modification, really packing the detail in. We have on one occasion a delightfully idiosyncratic miniature boutique. That's a lot of syllables to put in 4 words. The creativity and humour of the text is also present. It's been written with some charisma. You can have a wheelie experience on rollerblades, and on one example, it gushes over a museum and suggests that if you haven't got a child, it's worth borrowing one to get in there, and I think that's quite funny. The discourse structure, to give a final language level for analysis here, the discourse structure is quite unique, and they obviously have their own format of orthographical conventions for organising a lot of information clearly. So the graphology includes things like heading and subheading, the use of icons, the T for telephone number and the W for website. Brackets being used predictably to insert factual information within description. Italics are used to offer French phrases, local phrases. Bold text is used in all of the text boxes to actually highlight key words. In the directory, it's used for the titles of businesses or attractions. Page references to other points in the guidebook would allow you to navigate backwards and forwards. All of these features combine to make this a really easy to navigate text, despite being densely packed. And if you were, I don't know, trying to look up something while standing on a bus in Paris, there are many features here that would allow you to find that reference that you saw earlier quite quickly. So finally then, to consider the connections between this text and other texts within the anthology, there are other texts produced by corporate authors, the Eurostar advert, the Lonely Planet videos, and the British Pathé narration. Rick Steves is kind of both individual and brand, so he has an interesting kind of branded use of language in his. I think it was probably doubtful that you would be asked to compare this text to one of those texts because of their similarities, but it's certainly worth considering the way that this form of language usage links some of the texts. You could think very carefully about how language changes in personally authored accounts, such as Breathless or Neither Here Nor There, or in the spoken mode text where people are talking about their individual and personal experiences. Other representations of family, as you will know, in Paris include the Gransnet Forum and Just Another American in Paris, and these offer somewhat different representations of what it's like to be a parent in Paris. There are, of course, sub-representations within this text, and they've printed quite a lot of this text in the anthology, meaning that there are, of course, a good chance that you would be offered an extract from within the text, maybe offering a sub-representation, something like the parks and public spaces. These are represented in Understanding Chic, where we have the dramatic slap incident, Around the World in 80 Dates, which has the representation of the cemetery, and the Memories of Parc Monceau, which contains a very interesting representation of Parisian parenting, which would make perhaps quite an interesting comparison to this text. Well, that's all that I have time for in this one. It's been way over 10 minutes, as I promised you. As long as it takes, really, is the mantra now. Thank you for your focus and your attention. I hope that you found the information in this video useful. Don't forget to check out the playlist because there are videos for many of the texts up there, and good luck with your studies.